Howdy,
Hello,
everybody.
hello.
How's it going?
Hello, Austin. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good, thank you. Living the dream.
Living the dream. Well, let's wait just a moment and let some people join. If people are already in here, if you want to say hello and where you're joining from in the chat, that would be great. Um, but yeah, thanks for taking time to join us.
Yeah, good to see a few people hopping in here. Some chat action happening. Austin, where are you calling in from today?
I am from Denver, Colorado, so it's a little cold outside today, but it's nice. What about you?
Calling in from Sweden, south of Sweden, which is my home country. I did live in Vancouver, where Operto is based, for the past 7 years, but moved back about 3 or 4 months ago. So it's
Beautiful.
cold here as well, and it's getting dark. We're just losing daylight over here, so my ring lights are coming into effect.
Beautiful. Looks like we got
Well,
a few people chiming in. Lyndon from London, hello. Hello across the pond. And then we got
hello.
Marty from Netherlands.
Nice European contingent over here.
That's right.
Welcome.
I'm outnumbered.
All right, let's see our American folks over on the chats.
That's right.
Who's phoning in? Who's calling in from the States? Canada. Come on, Mexico. Anyone?
North America represent. Come on. All right. Well, shall we do the thing, Axel? Shall we get
I
going?
think we shall. I think we
All
shall.
right.
Yeah, let's do it.
From sunny Cyprus. Well, we are jealous there, Jenny or
Oh
Jen.
yeah, we're both complaining about the weather over here, so definitely jealous.
All right. Well, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome again, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's session, the upsell advantage for modern vacation rentals. So, like I said, my name's Austin Weaver. I'm a business development manager for the US and Canada, but I work for Avantio. And obviously, I'm joined by Axel here from Operto. So, Axel, thanks for leading the session today. He's got a really great presentation for you guys, and yeah, I'm excited to be here. So before we dive in, a few housekeeping items for everyone. So the session is being recorded, just so you are all aware. A link will be sent, as well as a copy of the slide deck. And then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end, so please pop your questions in there. I think that's where we can really get a lot of value from people that might have some insightful questions. And then, of course, you could jump into the chat section, and we can make sure to have some time to answer there. Yeah, so what are we covering today? So it's, supercharge your guest experience, the upsell. What are you doing with upsells? Are you leaving anything out on the table? How are you actually giving the guest a good experience while also, putting some money in your pocket? That's really what we're going over. And yeah, I think I'll kick it on over to my man Axel from Sweden.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for the introduction, Austin. My name is Axel, as mentioned. I work as head of solutions engineering at Operto, which means I'm actually not an engineer. I'm on the sales team. But what I do all day is I look at tech stacks. I look at what our clients come with and the needs that they have, and I see, will our solutions actually fit in with the needs that you're going for, the targets you have for your business. So both from a technical perspective, but also from what you actually need. We're pretty firm. We're not solving problems that don't exist. So if there's something you don't need, we're not gonna go and sell it to you. And I'm the one who puts up those red flags or puts green flags, make sure it all fits together. So what are we going to talk about today? We have a quick agenda here. We're going to go through why upsells are important. We are going to think about how to craft your upsells, the offers, and then in terms of the strategy, how to actually kind of get them out there and present them and then make them operational as well. So making sure that you haven't just come up with a bunch of stuff that's going to cause a headache down the road. So we're going to go through a few different points here. Ultimately, we're going to try to answer some questions like, how much additional revenue per month do you think you can generate? Do we think you can generate? Will it pay for your tech stack? Otherwise, you don't want to be paying for technology that isn't producing an ROI. How will you share this revenue with your vendors, your owners? We're going to talk about some of that. And then obviously on the operational side, how will this become operational without being a strain on your staff? How will you actually handle fulfillment? So we'll go through a few different interesting tidbits here. All right, Austin? Perfect. I'm calling out
I'm
Austin
on
at a few
mute, but
random points
yes,
here.
absolutely.
Perfect. I'm just calling out Austin to make sure he's awake here. To stop myself from having a total monologue here. That's going to be the case regardless. But let's jump in. Okay, so power of upsells in vacation rentals. So why are we even talking about this? Well, we got a bunch of people on the line here who are interested, so we must have hit some sort of sweet spot. But the way we see it, upselling is important because ultimately, it generates money. That's obvious. It increases that average revenue per booking or whatever revenue metrics that you are looking at. But it also creates a better guest experience. So that kind of comes through in a few different ways, right? You see that the loyalty gets extended. You have better guest loyalty because you've had a personalized experience for your guests. You see benefits like differentiating your property, actually getting additional bookings in the first place, but then also knock-on effects, right? So positive domino effect here of having local economic benefits. What I'm talking about there is things like your local relationships with vendors and partners in the local area. They benefit from this. And it can even have a better experience for a staff because there's additional revenue go around in your business. All these sorts of things that are really positive for your destination and your property. Looking at the stats just really quickly, there's some interesting stats here. It's almost like one of these undeniable facts that upselling is positive. There's some big numbers here. Increasing revenue by 10 to 30%. That's above what you're making today. If you've done a good job implementing upsells, lots of operators say that 20% of their total revenue is coming from upsells. 70% of guests are open to upsells. That's probably a bit of an arbitrary number, to be honest. But even looking down at individual line items of upsells, so let's say we take early check-in specifically, 60% of guests are willing to pay for that. And you're probably going to see an even higher number in specific circumstances. That's just polling them at a random time. But if they actually really need it, you're going to get the higher number. ROI is really high. We see crazy ROI on like the software tools themselves, just looking at the cost that you have for this stuff. So yeah, 1,000% ROI on this sort of stuff. Even at the absolute lowest end, when we look at our own internal data, no one makes less than 100% ROI, and then from there on, the sky's the limit almost. So you're going to get good money out of this.
And
Axel,
then
finally,
do you mind if I jump in real quick? I just wanted to add one small thing. Obviously, we're talking about money here, but this is really a positive feedback loop from my point of view, and the property managers that I work with every day. When you're expanding local economic benefits, you have a friend with a coffee shop down the street, you're benefiting that community. You're also giving the guests a good experience, and you're making money. Really, there's benefits all the way around. So I'm excited to dive into this more with you.
And exactly, and that actually connects to the last point there about direct bookings, because if you build that guest loyalty, you're going to get more direct bookings on your next visit. And the data also shows that people who book direct are more likely to pay for upsells, because it kind of goes both ways. You bought something from someone once, and now you can buy directly the whole booking from them next time. But also, once you have that direct relationship, it's easier to market those additional services. So, why now? Well, one interesting thing here is that obviously we see hotels competing more directly with short-term rentals on their home ground now, essentially, with hotels becoming more short-term rental-esque in many ways, and we see that across the industry. But hotels obviously have an advantage in that they have all these amenities, they have all these offers almost built into the core offering, right? So a lot of travelers are saying, no, I'm not going to pick a short-term rental because XYZ doesn't exist there. And also, we're seeing that a lot of revenue in hotels are coming from these additional amenities and services. So if we can replicate that in a short-term rental setting, there is a big upside to be gained. All right, we're going to run a quick poll here just to see where the audience here is at today with your upsells. So are you currently doing upsells to your guests? And the options here are, yes, you're offering a suite of upsells in an organized way, kind of presenting it in an organized fashion, or you do a few just upon request, or you're just kind of thinking about it, or you're pretty much, nah, it's not for me. I'm thinking might be unsure about the investment here. let's see what the results are on this. All right, so we don't have a ton of people doing upsells very well. We have about half the audience here doing some basic upselling over messaging, and we have about half of them considering it. So we have a great opportunity here to take away some learnings today. Perfect. All right, so let's get into it. Building your upsell strategy. All right, so what are we actually gonna think about when we create our offers? So first up, we're going to look at thinking about the actual services we're going to put up to our guests. And then later on, we're going to look at how we put them out there. So some areas to look at as you're thinking about what to offer are kind of these three things: understanding your guest journey, analyzing booking data, and leveraging your destination. So the first two are really important because you've got a lot of data on this already. Those people who answered in the poll that they've got upsells happening through messaging, well, that's a great place to start. What are people already asking for? What are people asking for during different seasons? So that's a good booking data. What are people asking for of different kind of guest types if you segment them by different traveler types? And then is it happening at different types in the guest journey? So if we're looking at early check-in, you obviously have to offer that before check-in. And if you're looking at a mid-stay clean, maybe that's something you would plan ahead, or maybe it's something that you kind of realize mid-stay, your kids were messing up the place and you need someone to come in and clean it. So there's a lot of opportunities to think about the time, the kind of the booking window for the upsell, if that makes sense, and then seeing what's kind of worked and hasn't worked in the past. And obviously looking at people in the area, both for inspiration in general, but also kind of really leveraging your destination, right? So why are people staying with you in the first place? What sort of travelers do you have? What would be complementary to their experience to enhance the time that they're having with you? Austin, do you have anything additional to that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties into what I was talking about with that first slide. So I personally believe in leveraging your destination. I love to go travel. Obviously, I've been in this industry for a long time now. When you're able to tie in something, I think that's what you saw with the hotel slide too. Why are people choosing that? Well, they have these amenities built in. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to make money, but make the guests have a better time? It seems like this simple thing, but as we saw from kind of some of the responses, we're not necessarily streamlining that all so much. And so what can you do? Have the local coffee shop that you love that's down the street, offer something to your guests, be able to give somebody an early check-in when the property is clean. Doing these little things, and some of them can be really big. Have something special prepared for the guest that's coming in because they're there for a really special trip that they only take once a year. These all make a difference. And like I said, really everybody's happy. It's just about giving a platform that makes it easy to understand and easy to accomplish. So I would say that's what I would have to add there.
You got it. All right. So to give it a little bit more guidance as you're thinking about this, I like to categorize upsells in three categories. So in-house offerings, local partnerships, and affiliate commissions. And the reason I like to do this is to kind of give you a bit of a roadmap in terms of how to lay this out. And also, as we talk about fulfillment later, to give you that sense of how much work is going to go into actually making this happen. So from top to bottom, the top ones are actually the ones that you have the most control over. You're going to have the highest margin on them, which is maybe the most important thing, but also the ones that are going to be most arduous to fulfill. So in-house offering is anything that your own team fulfills. It could be services. It could be anything around the booking, right? So early check-in, late checkout, stay extensions, those are really obvious. And then things that maybe relate to the property experience. So pet fees is a really popular one, a really good way to make some money. Housekeeping services, mid-stay cleans, things like that can also be a huge one. Even parking, everyone's going to need to park somewhere if you're driving. So that's a good one to offer, especially if it's multifamily and not kind of an absolute given that you're going to have it. Pool, spa, gym, barbecue, rooftop patios, anything you can kind of add to the experience around amenities, that sort of thing. Even, additional maybe like logins for the TV, whatever it might be that you have to offer here. That's all kind of in-house. You also have items, right? So welcome packages, special occasions, maybe it's decorations or cakes or champagne or whatever your packages may contain, just to make that experience really special. Like Austin mentioned, people take these kind of like a bigger trips and want to make it a big, big exciting thing, right? So having those packages, some of these were going to be high margin, some of them are going to be low margin. An early check-in, pretty high margin. Maybe you tell your cleaner to prioritize the one property over another, but maybe your cost structure is barely impacted. However, obviously paying for a bottle of champagne and all the decorations for someone to go there and put it up is actually going to be fairly low margin. But it depends on how you structure it and why you're doing it, right? If it's actually to make the stay really memorable and make sure the same guest books again next year, then it's really worth it. But it's important to think about those things. So that's all in the in-house offerings. Your team's fulfilling it. Now, local partnerships goes to that kind of coffee shop, the fishing charter down the road or whatever that Austin was talking about. Really leveraging that local area. If it's people who rent out kayaks or whatever it might be, anyone who's offering something that's complementary to the experience in the local market, bring those guys in. Guided tours, transportation, restaurant reservations, really anything that you can make a deal with to kind of present in your own package to your guests and have them go out and be enjoying an experience with someone external. Now, the third one is affiliate commissions. So this is where you use sites like Viator, Get Your Guide, BabyQuip, Bounce, these kinds of services where you sign up and you basically get a link to like experience bookings, or in the case of BabyQuip, it's baby equipment, Bounce and Stashers, like luggage services, right? So you sign up for these guys, you get a link, and as long as someone clicks your link, for the next 30 days, if they make a booking through that site, you get 8% of the revenue, 10%, whatever the commission structure is. It's pretty easy money, very, very hands-off. This is going to be the lowest strain service offering that you can do, because you literally have nothing to do with it. It's just a link that you put in. And it's going to make you some money, but it's also not going to be life-changing money. And it's maybe not going to be life-changing for the experience either, because it's kind of external to what happens in your property. Still really, really useful, and could even be a really good way to start as you're just building out your offering and maybe don't want to put resources towards those in-house offerings. Okay. Now, the important thing here is to get kind of creative. Like, you have to test out and see what's working, right? So maybe you end up doing like something that's a little bit across the lines here, maybe like an eco-conscious guest package that's doing carbon offsets and local eco tours and green amenities or whatever it might be. It could be something that doesn't necessarily go into one of these categories, but being creative is really important as you're building out the strategy. Okay, now you've done that, and it comes to kind of positioning and presenting your upsells. There's 3 bits of advice that I would give here. It's highlighting immediate benefits. So often when you're presenting and wording something, and I'm sure ChatGPT can help you with this, but making the offer sound really appealing, like something that's going to give a pretty immediate payoff, either in stay when it's happening, when they're booking it, or if it's pre-stay, and then make sure that it's going to be ready for them when they come. So skip the lines or enjoy a VIP treatment, things that sound very kind of luxurious and it's going to give an instant payoff. On the same note there, focus on convenience and experience, things that make it easier to be a guest, just to enjoy their experience and forget about the everyday hassles of groceries or transportation can be really helpful as well. And obviously memorable experiences, we've talked about this. And then what you can also do, and we kind of touched on this, but bundling and kind of putting together packages. So kind of coming beyond those barriers of the categories I just mentioned. But if you make kind of a bundle that has multiple different things, even if the bottle of champagne is really low margin, maybe it comes with an early check-in that is high margin. And then you can kind of build those packages in a way that becomes really profitable and also a great experience. And that's obviously, again, where you know your guests, by knowing why are they coming, collecting those reasons for travel, and making that really targeted towards what they're looking for. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break there and look at a poll before we move into implementations, because we're gonna find out what the biggest challenge is in putting in upsells offers, the way that you guys are seeing it as operators. So coming up with relevant offers, showcasing them to your guests, coordinating requests with the team, or kind of analyzing revenue data and the accounting that follows on this. So what are your biggest challenges? I promise we'll address all of these, but I'll be curious to see what's coming out of the poll here. All right. Gonna give it a few more seconds, and here we go. So we've got a pretty even split between 1 and 2. Coming up with relevant offers and showcasing them to your guests are kind of the 2 biggest challenges here. And hopefully we've kind of tackled a little bit on the first one. But spoiler alert, we also have a full upsell guide that's going to be a QR code later. You can go and find all this information back later. Showcasing upsells to your guests. We've kind of talked a little bit about that as well, but luckily also Avantio and Operto can help with that from like the digital platform side. And then we've got some people who are also worried about the operational side, which we're going to jump into right now. So that's a great segue. Okay. So implementing upsells in your operations. So here we're gonna look at a bunch of different stuff because I told you before, I kind of nerd out on tech and I nerd out on how things are actually going to plug and play and work together. And this is kind of it, because this is actually the hardest part. Coming up with upsells, it is once you start, it's going to come fairly easy, but making sure that it actually works is going to kind of be the harder part. So a few bits of advice here that we've seen through the years is kind of the first 3 here are all about how it gets presented to your guests. So promote through digital channels. So this is using the tools that are available to you, whether it's in your PMS, whether it's an external messaging app, whether it's an entire kind of upsell platform, to make sure you're getting those offers in front of your guests. Usually that is in a digital way, because then you can do it pre-stay, in-stay, after-stay, anytime that you really like to present the offers, they will be there for your guests at their leisure, as opposed to, you know, a folder that's in the property when they show up. It might often be too late, especially if it's something that they would do in destination anyway, that they would have booked separately, but not with you getting a share of that. So promoting it digitally at the right time, and then encouraging it to be guest led. So this is just kind of making sure that it's presented in an a la carte way where they can browse the offers that are available and they don't have to feel kind of pressured into picking one thing, or even being able to discuss it with their party, all this sort of stuff, the travel party. What are we going to do? How are we going to plan this out? Make sure that it's really easy for the guests. And to do this, we have found that integrations are mission critical. So here we're talking about the tech specifically. So if you're doing this really manual and it's not kind of automated, it's kind of sitting as a separate piece of tech or not being tech run at all, it's often not worth the squeeze. It's just kind of a lot of hassle to deal with. So make sure that whatever solution you're looking at is kind of integrated with your PMS. It's kind of your baseline, making sure that reservations are syncing through, messages are sending out, and that hopefully there's some sort of automated flow for the upsells themselves as well. Finally, as much as we like to talk about tech, hospitality is a people business, so involve the team. Make sure that your team is on board with this, that they are trained to recognize upsell opportunities, make sure that they realize that it's good both for the experience and for the revenue of the company and maybe for themselves, and that it feels natural when they are presenting, so they have good training on those interactions. Okay, a few more bits of practical advice here. When it comes down to actually processing your upsells, so you put them out there, your guests are browsing them, and they want to actually make a purchase or book something with you. Now, a few things to make sure here. Streamlining payments. This is a huge one. If it's difficult for guests to pay, they're just not going to do it. That's why you see e-commerce sites spending billions and billions of dollars optimizing one tiny button, moving it here from there, just to make sure that you have that 0.1 higher conversion. Same thing for you. If payments is difficult, people are just not going to bother. They're going to go to the local vendor directly, or they're going to just be like, oh, I guess I didn't really need that one thing anyway. And so streamlining payments, really, really key. Organizing the flow is huge too. So if someone makes a request, you have to have the capability to actually fulfill it. So that kind of splits into two things. One thing is, when you're creating your upsells, you're probably going to decide, is it something that we do every single time, almost like an automatic approval, or do we need to get a request and we see, hey, can we do this? Is this something we have capacity for, and then approve it. For the latter, might be something like an early check-in, where you have to check if the housekeeping team is going to have time to turn that unit over for the new guest to offer that early check-in. So maybe we do that upon request. For something that's automated, maybe it's like pet fees. Yeah, we offer this. It's a part of our offering, and we always say yes to this because we know that the housekeeping team does have capacity to clean after a pet, and then TBD whether they can do the early check-in after or not. So we have to think about kind of automated approvals versus requests, and then obviously what happens with it after. Who gets to informed about this? Who gets told they have to fulfill this request? So if it is the housekeeping team, maybe the housekeeping lead gets notified of the request, and they say yes or no, they approve it. And then the housekeeping team, maybe the actual housekeeper gets notified that yes, the early check-in has been approved, and we're not going to have to clean and have this done 2 hours earlier. Meanwhile, someone who's doing a champagne package, that's probably not going to go to housekeeping. That goes to kind of guest relations or whoever is dealing with it. So it's really important to set up those notifications, approval rules, all that sort of thing in the right way.
And hey,
Austin?
Axel. Yeah. So we actually got a question. So Christina was wondering, do guests normally buy upsells during their bookings or afterwards? And I would just like to offer my answer to that. I don't have the data on it, and maybe Axel does as well. But typically with my specific property managers that are customers of ours, they're setting it up so that those guests have the ability to book that with them during their bookings. I mean, obviously they're going to check and they're going to get their check-in instructions and they're going to get notifications, so on and so forth. But when they're in that price point of actually booking and they see really easily, hey, click this button and you're actually going to be able to rent kayaks for $100. They'll be at the dock, at the lake, ready to go for you and your family. They're going to get that right then. Or, and they have the ability to get it later. But when you make it easy and actually have a flow and you have something set up that the guests can follow very simply, in our opinion, that's what they're going to be able to do it. And it really affects that way when you have something like an Operto or your PMS that are talking together and syncing so that everything is really flowing very nicely. So that's a roundabout way of saying, in our experience, it's typically during their bookings rather than afterwards. But what do you think, Axel?
Yeah, our stats show that roughly 80% of upsells are purchased prior to or at check-in. So check-in being defined as day of arrival, basically in this case, which means either at the time of booking or at some point in between. So I think at the time of booking is really powerful for those people who are really set on this is what we want, this is the experience we've decided on. But then having something that you can still go back to in between is really powerful for those things that you have to maybe discuss with your party, or if you make your accommodation booking first and later you book flights and realize, oh, hey, I'm gonna have to sit in a Starbucks for 2 hours waiting for this property to be available. Oh, I can buy an early check-in. So I think if you can do a combination and have it through the booking engine and in some other form, then that's your kind of best bet at making this really viable.
Really great point.
Okay, and then in terms of pricing strategy, this is just kind of basically saying that you should iterate and make sure that you adjust your pricing as you go. Think about the margin that you want to achieve, but also think about what's reasonable for the service that you're offering. And consider free options. So this one is quite interesting. If there are amenities that you normally offer for free or that are really low cost and you're willing to give away for free, it's a good idea to make them upon request, just to get people used to using this interface and getting people like, oh, hey, I already got my mid-stay linen refresh for free. So, I mean, I've already saved money that way. And now I might as well buy the special package or whatever it might be. I now can afford this tour because, I got my snacks, my rival snacks or something for free, whatever it might be. If there are things you can offer, it's a good way to do it, to kind of just get people comfortable and feel like they're getting good value out of their stay. Okay. This is the last of these slides, I promise. Okay, so these are really important too, though. Fulfillment. I mentioned this before, but making sure that you have some way of tracking that what you've sold is actually being taken care of. So maybe someone did get notified, but do you need any sort of like fail safes or service recovery? Do you need to have a plan for what happens if it doesn't actually get done? And is your team actually just tracking this through the Upsell platform, or is there something external? Is there like a housekeeping or a task software or something where you're actually tracking this? That's what I would recommend. Or do you use like a project tool like Monday.com or Airtable or something? Anywhere you can track it, it's just important that you do it and it doesn't fall through the cracks, because that's really the worst thing that can happen. Is that you've sold something, you put all this energy into it, and you end up having to refund it, or even give something extra back to your guest because you failed to do it. Now, incentives, I mentioned including the team earlier on, but this is also where you can be a little bit smart about thinking, you're getting extra revenue. What are we going to do with this revenue? Well, obviously, you're going to make a bit more money for the company, but can we also use this to actually drive staff engagement? So if you want your team members to promote your upsells, if you want your housekeeping team to approve more early check-in requests, then maybe some portion of what you're making on this can go back to them. And then that ultimately leads to this kind of positive feedback loop of the local economic benefits, thinking about your staff, thinking about your guest status or your staff satisfaction. So it can be a really good idea to include your team on a financial level as well as kind of a training end level. And when it comes to that side of kind of like thinking about where does the money go, rev share is important in two big ways. One is what sort of percentage do you take with the external vendors that you use? So if you have someone external delivering the romance package, or if it's just like sending someone to a coffee shop that you work with, will you take a percentage off either of those? How much will it be? Who does the heavy lifting in this situation? Who brings the lead? You bring the lead, probably the partner does the heavy lifting, but this is a really big one to consider. And then the other side of that coin is your owners, your homeowners, if applicable. Most of you probably do have those, and it's a big deal. Is this money that you're keeping for yourself because it's not necessarily booking related? Lots of our clients do tend to do that. Lots of them also share the entire revenue. Some select specific categories. So you'll see people saying like, okay, here's the reservation related bucket of upsells, and we're going to share that revenue with our homeowners per the usual agreement. So early check-in, late checkout, additional nights, obviously, that all becomes really kind of reservation centric. But delivering a bottle of champagne or selling a tour to Disneyland, that's going to be separate from kind of the reservation, and that's something we keep for ourselves. So it's an important consideration, and obviously something you need to build into your contracts as well. And then final point for me here is kind of iterate and evolve. Don't let this be a stagnant kind of something you just create once and leave it and as a constant. You have to really keep building on this to make it really successful.
And Axel, awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to ask a question and then maybe kind of give an example on my end. So the example would be, Jessica, who's here with us today, she's in Tennessee. Nashville is the bachelorette town, and you think, okay, I'm going to contact this party bus company that I know who's going to come pick people up and we're going to split revenue. So great idea. By the way, don't think it's a bad idea. I've done that before on a bachelor trip. But in terms of what are your opinions, maybe data driven or maybe unknown, like the three most, like the must have upsells if you're just starting to implement and you're like, where do I start? Where do you think somebody should go from there?
It depends. I would say there's two ways to go about it. Either you go with the affiliate ones, which is go and buy it or find a party bus that looks cool, link to it through your messaging, and call it a day. You're going to get 8% on every booking that's made, and you don't have to do anything to make it happen. Or you go for those really high margin ones, which are internal and that are service related. So early check-in, late checkout, those are by far the two biggest seller. And the third one is going to be pet fees, which if you are pet friendly, it's a given, and you're going to be able to actually mark that on your property, obviously, as well, which is going to give you a defining edge, which might let you stand out against competition.
Sure.
Yeah. And we are actually going to see some data on that in a second as well. Okay. Speaking of data, this is my final really boring slide, but it's a different one. I told you it's going to be different. Okay, so measuring success. For any project that we do, we want to think about KPIs and metrics and what do we actually want to achieve? What's our goals, and how do we measure it? So these are my kind of top KPIs that I would keep an eye on if I were to implement an upsell program. Obviously, dollars generated as like just a flat number. Yes, you want to know that. But you also want to know some of the other kind of knock-on effects. So review scores, is this actually having a positive guest experience? Maybe you can even look at direct booking rates if they're going up in any way. Conversion on the upsells themselves. So are you seeing any, are people buying the offers that you're putting out there? Otherwise, what's the point? There's also a risk of having too many upsell offers because then people get overwhelmed. They're scrolling through pages and pages of stuff. So if you have low converting stuff, rewrite them, try them again. But if it's just not happening in your market, just get rid of it and let people focus on the top, 5 or 10 or 12 that are going to convert. Percentage of automated approvals. So I mentioned before, maybe we have this rule about pet fees are always approved. Early check-ins are upon request. It is a good one to take a kind of have an eye on, because if you're spending a ton of time kind of like phoning different departments and saying, hey, can we do this? And spending a bunch of time on it, maybe that's one thing that's not worth it. Maybe you kind of pull back and move towards more of these kind of automated, always approved versions, which goes into that effort point as well. If it takes a ton of effort on your team to fulfill the request itself, again, it kind of goes into the final point of margins. But if it costs a bunch of money to get the materials to fulfill the romance package and then send it to someone in to spread out all the rose petals on the bed or whatever it is, then again, if the juice is not worth a squeeze, consider cutting it. But give it a shot and see what actually works. Keep an eye on the metrics in the meantime. Any additionals you would add to that, Austin?
No, I think this is really important. Obviously, you have to have a measurable. Why are you doing this? What benefit are you getting from this? Is the guest getting something? I think it kind of leads into another question I thought of, which is just like, Operto directly helps with this. What have you seen a successful story or an impressive, like unique strategy that somebody's implemented on your guys' side? What is, kind of a success story for people watching today that they can say, oh, wow, that's pretty unique there?
Yes, actually, I do. So let me give you some stats here. These are kind of like an operator's income over a year on different upsells, and so we're going to talk about the pet fees in a second, but also if you look at the 4 ones after that, they're all different versions of an early check-in and late checkout. They're basically around access time to the property. So those two basically meaning that is the biggest post if you just count it as one. But there are lots of different ones. So we have a great case study with some small kind of coastal rentals, and they offered personalized surf lessons and equipment rentals because they knew lots of people came in. You're not going to bring a surfboard, regardless of your experience level, potentially. Well, some people do. But I think it was a kind of more like a fly to destination. And they also had identified there was a lot of kind of beginner surfers. And so they put this up through their own website, through their own upsell program. And they actually managed to increase their revenue by about 40% in ancillary services, which is pretty amazing. We've seen urban properties doing things like digital nomad packages where like you get better like office furniture and high-speed Wi-Fi, things like that. So you can get, it's not some properties that's going to be expected anyway, but in some ones that might work quite well. So we saw extended stays were up in that category where that was offered. And then another customer that we had is kind of eco lodges, and they started doing these nature excursions with local guides, and that obviously plays really well into the kind of the story of the property itself. And in this case, we a result of 25% higher guest satisfaction scores at the end, or kind of after implementation of that program. So some pretty cool results. And when it comes to kind of just straight up money, here's kind of a bit of a breakdown on that pet fee option that we just looked at. So this customer here, I think this is last year's numbers, 88 units. They ran almost 2,400 reservations through them through the year. And they had about 1,000 purchases of pet fees specifically. the average that they had across their properties for that was $90. And so if you break that down on a per reservation basis, it's $37. But that's $87,000 in a year in pet fees. And it's pretty astounding because it's not a ton more effort, cleaning effort. Yeah, it's a little bit of a hassle because you have to be maybe vacuum a little bit harder at the end of the stay. But at the end of the day, this is going to be good margin money that you're making. Plus, you can mark those properties as pet friendly on your different channels. So big deal there.
And I think if you're doing this right, and that's the point of today, right? Like if you're doing this right, you're offering a service to the guests, you're offering it to the homeowner, you're making money. And really, if you're not, you're leaving money on the table. And then maybe somebody as simple, I know pet fees are common, but somebody as simple as wanting to bring their dog. I know I love mine, and you don't have that there. Maybe you lose out on a guest too, right? So
For sure.
there's benefits all around, and $90,000 across 88 properties just for bringing pets that probably you were going to do anyways, and probably most of the time with all the doodles out there didn't change how much they vacuumed.
Totally. Oh, there's my cat.
And that's okay. That's perfect
Speaking
timing,
of pet
I have to
fees,
say.
he must have heard it. He must have heard us talking about it.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it is a good one, but it's even things like other convenience things like damage waivers can count into this as well. Okay, do you want to jump down from my desk, please? So damage waivers, if you don't want to pay a massive security deposit because you want to spend that money in some other way, then that can be a big convenience factor as well. Maybe you do a $49 damage deposit, and margins on damage deposits sit at around 70 to 80%. So like, again, think about those high margin items and things that also improve the life of your guests. Okay, we're almost done for the day. Those were all the fun stats that I wanted to share you to inspire you onto upsells. Quickly about Operto, our mission in this space is to deliver exceptional stays to every guest every single time. So we integrate software and hardware. We obviously have primarily talked about the software offering today with upsells and which happen through our guest portal, which is a nice kind of guest journey tool. And then we also have integrations for things like smart locks and thermostats to make sure that when the guest actually shows up and they're excited about their stay because they've done all these upsells, they can get in really easily to their stay and there's nice temperature, things like that. We also have a wonderful housekeeping and maintenance solution called Operto Teams, which makes sure that the fulfillment of all these tasks happens really smoothly. So really our mission is to make sure that we can automate the entire post-booking journey. So we don't overlap with Avantio in that way. Avantio would take in all the reservations and handling listings and all that sort of stuff. Once the booking has been made, that's when we can kind of kick in and take care of some of the back-end stuff of making sure that the stay goes really smoothly. We do that through 3 different products, which we're not going to go into in a ton of detail today, but I kind of mentioned it already. For the guest-facing side, tech, hardware, and teams, housekeeping and maintenance, and it's all quite wonderful. Avantio also has some really cool functionality on all these points, not maybe on the tech side, but to my point before, we always make sure that we don't sell something that you don't need. So if you're an Avantio customer and you say, hey, I actually already have a great guest portal, great, don't buy it from us. Just use our locks or the housekeeping or whatever you need. We'll talk about that if or when you want to come and chat with the Operto team. Austin, any other thoughts on that?
No, that's right. I mean, listen, whether you guys are looking to figure out upsells or whatever, it's all got to be coherent. So you need to have your tech stack in order, but also you need to figure out what benefits your area. Is it the pet fee? Is it the partnerships? What can you do to make those few extra dollars? And people like Axel at Operto or myself at Avantio are here to help. And, we'd love to talk to you guys about it, but it's definitely something you need to be implementing. And scan this QR code.
And yeah, here's a fantastic resource to start on your upsell journey. It is a free upsell playbook. It's going to have a ton of important information. Some of the stuff we talked about today, some more stuff. It's basically going to give you that action plan of going through your current upsell offering if you have one, or creating one, exploring those partnership opportunities with local businesses for unique upsell opportunities, and then implementing the right technology stack, implementing the right processes for a seamless upsell management kind of structure, and then obviously monitor and optimizing with data-driven insights to make sure you have your eye on those metrics. All right, we're right on time too. Look at us go. that is us for today. We do have a few minutes for questions. So shoot them into the Q&A or the chat or wherever suits you best, and we'll cover them right here. Or of course, reach out. You have my email there. You have Austin's email there. Operto has a website. Avantio has a website. We're all available to chat. There's also tons of good resources in the resources tab here on Zoom, so that's fun. Go and open that up, click through some links. Okay, we got a question. What is an acceptable revenue share to ask from a coffee shop? That's a great question. Iterate and evolve is my answer. It depends, right? If you go to Starbucks and ask for a rev share, they're going to send you packing. So it's probably 0% with Starbucks. If it's a local coffee shop, then it probably depends on your relationship with them, to be honest. If you're sending them down there and they get like a free muffin with purchase and they send you $1 back for each of that or something like that, it might make that might make a lot of sense to them and you and everyone involved. Or maybe there's something bigger that you can do. Maybe you can actually maybe they deliver and you can actually have them bring stuff in and they just pay you a percentage on all those purchases. Because if you do a purchase online, it's a lot easier to track, so you don't have to give them like a discount code that gives you this and that. It can just be like a UTM tracking parameter when they click through to the e-commerce option of the local coffee shop, and if they can then deliver it to your property, or maybe it becomes like a breakfast offer or something, then you can easily talk about like an actual percentage. I would say anywhere between like 10, 15, 20% on something like that would make a lot of sense. But again, it may require a little bit of creativity and setting up those relationships with the local vendors.
Yeah,
Austin,
and
thoughts?
I'll just add to that, Jenny, real quickly. Coffee shop is unique. It might not be the highest ticket offer, but when I managed 2 properties here in Denver, before that, I actually managed coffee shops, and our home was walking distance to one that was a really nice one. And what we would do is we would offer, and they could do that online or in person, 10% off of their order was getting taken off and 10% was getting sent back to the homeowner. And I can't tell you how many times a family went there of 5 and the 2 parents brought their 3 kids a couple of muffins and a hot chocolate and they got their coffees. And so it can add up, and it can have that kind of positive impact there. So that would be my answer.
Everyone feels good.
Yes. And it looks like Ali asked in the chat, you're new to all of this. Is Avantio a property management software that pairs with my software? So it depends on what software you're talking about. If you're talking about another PMS, no, we probably compete with them, but that's okay. People like Operto are here, and they can help you by pairing. They pair to all the best, honestly, out there when it comes to that. Just depends on what you want in terms of ease of use, cost, connections and distribution channels. There's a lot of things we can go into. If you want to shoot me an email and learn anything more, please do. But sincerely, Operto pairs with all the best. So if you have, if you're wanting to upsell or do any of those management tools that they talk about post booking, Operto is a great one to talk to.
Thanks. Any other questions here before we wrap up? Sounds like we got it all answered. Well, our emails were on there, and we will share the recordings. You'll have all these details in your inbox in the next few days or so. So if there are questions that come up, feel free to email us both. We're always happy to chat. As you can tell, I've just had a 45-minute monologue, so you're welcome. Reach out to Austin. Get a different voice. No, but we're really excited to chat anytime. Okay, Ali has clarified that they have Operto and trying to get some property management software. Yeah, Avantio is a great one to look at for very good friends with return fee. So we would recommend to reach out to Austin. Cool. All right, then we shall wrap up there.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys,
everyone. Have a wonderful day, and see you on the other side.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.